Okay guys, I'm back. So I left off saying that I had to drive myself to the hospital in all that pain. And not only was I crying hysterically because I'm in pain, but I was also so frustrated that there were so many people and so many backup plans just in case anybody else fell through to take me to the hospital, and I ended up having to drive myself, which is no big deal. I kind of want to drive myself anyway because I don't trust many people driving me anywhere. But I was just so frustrated that I don't know. And I was in a lot of pain. And another thing I was crying over is that I didn't want to go to the hospital because I'm like, I'm just gonna go there for nothing. And I knew that I wasn't in labor. Like, you know what I mean? It was just in so much pain. Worst pain I felt in a really long time. Anyway, so I drove myself there, and of course, as I get in my car, I realized that my gas light is on, and I'm like, facepalm. Like, seriously, I was so mad at myself. And what happened was, the night before, I was coming home and I was so tired, I just wanted to get home. I know you all know that feeling. You just want to get home and relax, and big mistake. So I'm like, okay, I know how far I can usually make it with my car, so I took a different way, and I'm like, great, now I'm gonna take a different way. I've never been to the hospital this way, ever, and I'm like, watch me get lost, or watch it be longer, or whatever. And I did it because it was less stopping and going, and I didn't have to worry about as many potholes and stuff. And I don't know, so I took that way, and thankfully I was like, okay, once I got to this one road, I was like, okay, there's no way I can get lost now. So I'm in the car, and I'm on, for those of you who are local, I'm on Route 40, 322, whatever, and I'm taking it up towards Kennedy, but I'm still near the main road area. And whatchamacallit, yeah, so there's this one gas station, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to get gas here, and usually it's cheaper than everywhere else, so it's pretty cool. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring all my money. I brought just grabbed whatever and went, and I'm looking through my purse, and I have $6. And I'm like, thankfully my car is pretty good on gas. So I was like, I need $6 regular, and I'm sitting there crying hysterically, and the guy's like, and I'm like, $6. And I'm yelling, and he's like, he put the thing in, and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, no. I was like, I think I'm about to have a baby. I was like, but I'm not sure. I was like, but if you hurry up, it'd be great. So he sped pumped the gas or whatever, and he already took my money, so I could just kind of drive off. And then I don't know, I just kept going, and I was crying, I was in so much pain, and then I got stuck behind this guy who was going super slow. So I did the EMT thing, and I put well, I don't think people do it anymore, but back in the day, not back in the day, but 5-10 years ago, when I first started doing EMS, we would, if you have a blue light, you can do the blue light, you could do your 4-ways, or you could do both, if you're a firefighter responding to a call or whatever. So I put my 4-ways on, because I don't have a blue light, and I thought about getting a blue light just for this occasion, but I don't want to get a ticket without a permit right now. So had my 4-ways on, and I'm like, I sped up I was gonna pass them, and there was no one there, but it was a double line, and I'm like, I'm not risking my life on the way to the hospital, blah blah blah. So I sped up, and the reason why I kind of acted like I was gonna pass them was to get their attention in the rearview mirror, and then I'm like, move, right? And inside, I'm like, I want to laugh because it's funny, and I'm like, dude, if Brandon was in the car right now, he'd be cracking up. But I'm like, I was crying. Oh my gosh, I was in so much pain. It was the worst pain ever. Seriously, it was horrible. And then I got into this one road, and I don't know. And it's so funny because when people are in front of me, they have no idea what's wrong. But then when I pass them, they know because I have a bumper sticker that says what's going on. They're probably like, oh my gosh, okay, good. I'm glad I let her go. So I'm driving up the other road that goes kind of to the hospital, almost directly. And I got stuck behind these slow people again, and I'm sitting there freaking out, and then I started crying even harder because I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I can't stand this pain any longer. And it was a constant pain. It wasn't a wave, it wasn't contractions. It was constant. At least contractions, they come and go, and they might get strong, and you're like, oh shit, and then you're fine. But this was constant, and I felt at points it was constantly getting worse. And I was just like, oh man, I hate thinking of the pain because it's horrible. But I finally got to this one part, and this chicken tried to go into the the passing lane. And I was like, no, bitch, move. That's how I talked, because I was just like, I need to get to the hospital. Like, you gotta move. Like, get out. And, so yeah, so I kind of like cut her off. And then she was sitting there taking up 2 lanes. And I was like, I don't care. I will run you off the road right now. I don't care. And I like sped, I think I went from like 40 miles an hour, because that's how slow they were going, to like 80 miles an hour. And at that point, I did not care. And I passed like all these people. And then I was crying hysterically. And I noticed I passed this one truck. And the guy like looked at me. And they took like a double take. And he was like, every time people look at me, they get so scared when I, like, because I was crying and I'm sitting there holding my belly. And then when I pass them, like I said, they see my bumper sticker. So the guy at the light, he kept looking at me and he rolled his window down. And I'm in the left-hand turn lane to turn to the hospital. And I'm like, I just wasn't even looking at him. And I'm sitting there like trying to breathe through the pain. Oh my goodness. And then I'm like, okay, I'm only like a mile and a half away from the hospital. Just deal with it, just bear with it. And I'm just sitting there crying so hard. I finally get to the hospital. I pull right into valet, because there's no way I'm walking my ass anywhere. And I'm like, he's like, do you need, are you looking for valet? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay. He's like, and I came around and I'm like, he's like, do you need help? I said, yes, please. I said, I really need a wheelchair. I said, I really need help. And I was in so much pain I could hardly get out of the car. And he like wheeled me in, and then a security guard took me up to labor and delivery, and they already knew I was coming because I called, you know, UMDNJ, my midwives. And yeah, so, and I told them, and they're like, what's going on? And they had me on the monitor for a little bit, didn't see anything, and they're like, you know, we don't know what's causing your pain. And they did my urine. I'm not sure if they did I think they got it from my urine, because I don't think blood would have been back that fast. But they did my urine, and they're like, you know, we do have, I don't even know if urine shows that. I'm having a brain fart right now. But she was like, you know, your white blood cell count is really high. Must have been for my blood then. And then she was saying it, you know, you may have an infection, and maybe that's why you have a pain, you have this pain. And then she took my temperature, and my temperature was like 101 point something. And now keep in mind, that might sound like a normal fever to you guys. My natural body temperature is 96.7. So if I'm 98.6, it's the equivalent of me being like 100 point something. And, or, you know, like I said, like, yeah, the equivalent of a normal person being like 100 point something. So when people take my temperature and they're like, oh, it's 98.6, you're normal. I'm like, no, that's a fever for me. Like, you can't. So 101 for me is probably like 103 for you guys. And it wasn't flat. It was like 101.6 or 101.5, something like that. And I was just, oh my goodness. And apparently when you're pregnant, anything over 100.4, you're supposed to like go to the emergency room for. But I didn't even know I had a fever. I'm just sitting there shaking, like everything is shaking so bad. And I don't know. And she's like, are you cold? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm just shaking. And I was crying hysterically. She's sitting there trying to move me. She did a couple checks, and the baby did drop lower. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it's because the baby's even lower and he's about to, you know, come out soon. But then she checked my cervix, and she's like, oh, your cervix is still the same, still 2 centimeters. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So, I don't know. So she had me on the monitor, and then all of a sudden, the baby's heart rate just disappeared. And the nurse was in there, and she was like looking around, and she's looking at me, and then she's looking back at the monitor, and then she's like, lay on your side, and she came in, and she's like moving me around, putting pillows under me, and she's like moving the monitor all over my belly, trying to find his heartbeat. And then these people come in, and they're like, is she moving? Did she move? Is that why we can't, you know, the baby's not on the monitor? She's like, no. She was like, you know, she had a D-cell. And then the other girl was like, are you sure that she had a D-cell? And she's like, yeah, I'm sure. I was standing right here. She didn't move at all. The baby just, you know? And then they're like, oh my gosh. So I'm sitting there. I'm freaking out because I'm like, this is not good. And at least once they put me on the monitor, actually, for to tell you, when they wheeled me upstairs, I got out of the wheelchair, and the first step, I started having big contractions. Like, so big that it would not come any lower than 50. Like, before, my contractions would start at like 9, maybe sometimes 19, and then they would go all the way up to like 50s, 60s, sometimes like 75, 80, really big contractions. But these, they would not come down. They were stuck at like 40 or 50, and then they would go all the way up to like 80, and I'm like, dude, these are strong. And I'm sitting there, and I'm still trying to text Brandon, and at that point in time, I just gave up. I'm like, forget it. I give up. And, I don't know, so the lady came in and she's like, look, she's like, you have a temperature, she's like, your baby's not stable, you know, he had a couple decels, and she's like, you know, we're gonna have to admit you, and she's like, and we're gonna have to put you on penicillin because, you know, you have an infection. And then, I don't know, and then she was like, she came in and she's like, okay, she's like, here's the paper to sign consent for a vaginal delivery. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, vaginal delivery, alright, yeah, I could do this. So I signed it, and then she's like, the next paper, she's like, okay, now here's consent for a C-section. I was like, oh no. And she was like, what? She's like, you know, you understand the risk, right? She's like, you could die or your baby could die. And I'm like, I understand that. I said, but I'm really against it. I said, if my baby, if his life is at risk, by all means, I'll do a C-section. I was like, but if it's my life at risk, I was like, I can die. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but like, I just, like, over my dead body kind of thing. Like, if my baby is okay, then no, we're gonna try. But, if, you know, if he's crashing, in which he was, I would have to. And she's like, look, she's like, he's not okay right now. She's like, we need you to sign these so we can get you admitted. She's like, this isn't saying that you're going to have a C-section. She's like, this is just consent for it, just in case that were to come about, you know, we don't have to worry about going through paperwork. And I'm like, okay. So I sign it, and I was like, but only if he's in trouble, not me. And she's like, okay, no problem. So I'm sitting there, and it wasn't even 5 minutes later, and all these people come in my room, and they're like, okay, like, unfortunately, because of your baby, you know, he's not doing really good right now, and, you know, you're kind of crashing yourself, and he's like, in order to, you know, have it so both of you are okay here, he's like, we're going to have to go ahead and do an emergency C-section, and he's like, and it's not just going to be a regular C-section, he's like, we got to get him out now, like, you know, for the safety of you and him, and for your health and life and whatever. So I'm sitting there and I just started crying hysterically. I felt like I failed my baby, like, and I'm like, is it something I did wrong? Is it because of the Zumba? And it wasn't. I'm just like finding reasons to blame myself. And then I'm like, oh my god, Brandon's not here, my mom is not here. So I'm sitting there like trying to get a hold of Brandon. I finally I couldn't even talk because I was so upset. I was crying hysterically. So I got my mom on the phone, and then I just handed the phone to the nurse, and she told her everything that was going on. She was trying to leave school, but, you know, she teaches all the way, probably a good 40 minutes at least from the hospital, like, way past Cherry Hill, for those of you who are local. And, yeah, it was horrible, and I was so scared. And then I was like, well, where's my midwife? Is she here? They said she was on call, and, she actually ended up coming in last minute. Like, right as they were wheeling me out, she came in, and I was like, oh my god, I started crying even harder when I saw her, and I was like, Brandon's not here, my mom isn't here, and, I had sent Brandon's girlfriend a message, when I found out they were going to do a C-section, and it was going to be emergency, and, like, right now, and I was like, because Brandon's going to kill me for not being there to see his son born. And I know before, like, when we did IVF, it was, like, kind of cute seeing him, like, all in the scrubs and stuff for the procedure, but, like, now, it was just, like, I just really wanted him there, and, like, well, not necessarily, I could have done it by myself, but I know that he wanted to be there, and, of course, because it's his daddy, it's, like, even though we're not a family, it's just, like, a family moment, you know, watching your child be born, and, I don't know, so, I sent her a message, and I said, look, I don't know what's going on, but, like, I'm having an emergency C-section, like, now. I said, I cannot get a hold of Brandon, and I figured he was probably sleeping or had his phone off or he was busy or, you know, whatever. And I'm like, well, maybe he's still at work, like, you know, maybe he's flexed and stuck on a call, I don't know. And, so, yeah, they were wheeling me, and my midwife, Sarah, walked in, and she's like, it's okay, she's like, I'm gonna go suit up and get, you know, my scrubs on and everything, and she's like, I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna hold your hand the whole time. And I was just, like, so grateful for her. She was so amazing. I put, like, a little nomination for, like, a wonderful employee into the hospital, because they give you, like, these cards to fill out. And, like, I'm just sitting here thinking of, like, what I could possibly do for her, because I feel like I owe her the world right now. Like, I could almost cry just thinking about it. So she was the one who walked me back. Well, not walked me, but, you know, they had me in the bed and everything. They had to give me a catheter, and it was crazy because I was awake. Every time I've ever had a catheter, they put it in when I'm sleeping already, but obviously you can't be, well, you can be under general anesthesia for a C-section, but it passes over to the baby even more, and it's, you know, doesn't give them a very good APGAR score, and it makes them kind of out of it, so really didn't want to do that. I'm going to make another video, get into the 15-minute mark. Thanks for watching, guys.